Welcome back to the channel. Today we're uncovering the truth about one of the most misunderstood gods in mythology, Hades. Most people think of him as the evil ruler of hell, but that image is mostly created by modern movies and stories. In ancient Greek mythology, Hades wasn't a villain at all. He was simply the ruler of the underworld and the brother of Zeus and Poseidon. His role was to maintain balance between life and death. So today, we're exploring the real story behind Hades, the god you think is evil, but actually isn't. Let's dive in. When most people hear the name Hades, they instantly imagine darkness, punishment, demons, and a terrifying ruler of hell. Movies, books, and modern pop culture have turned him into the ultimate villain of Greek mythology. But the truth is far more surprising. The real story of Hades is not about evil, cruelty, or sadistic power. In fact, among the Greek gods, he may have been one of the most fair, responsible, and disciplined deities in the entire mythological universe. To understand why Hades has such a dark reputation, we first need to understand the world he ruled, the role he played among the gods, and how later interpretations twisted his image into something he was never meant to be. In Greek mythology, Hades was the ruler of the underworld, the place where all mortal souls went after death. That alone was enough to make people uncomfortable. Humans naturally fear death, and the ruler of the realm of the dead inevitably becomes associated with that fear. But the key thing many people misunderstand is that the Greek underworld was not the same as the Christian concept of hell. The underworld ruled by Hades was simply the final destination of the dead. It was not a place designed for eternal torture or punishment for sinners. In fact, most souls simply existed there peacefully in a shadowy state. The underworld was divided into different regions. The first was the Asphodel Meadows, where most ordinary people ended up. This was neither paradise nor punishment. It was simply a quiet existence for average souls. Then there was Elysium, a paradise for heroes and exceptionally good people. Here souls enjoyed peace, happiness, and beauty forever. Finally, there was Tartarus, the darkest and deepest part of the underworld. But this place was reserved only for the worst offenders in myth, beings like the Titans who fought the gods, or figures such as Sisyphus and Tantalus. Tartarus was not for ordinary humans. It was more like a cosmic prison for the most extreme offenders. In other words, Hades was not ruling a place of universal torment. He was managing the afterlife system of the entire world. To understand Hades, we must go back to the earliest stories of the Greek gods. He was the son of the Titans, Cronus and Rhea. Like his siblings, he was swallowed by his father shortly after birth. Cronus feared that one of his children would overthrow him, so he devoured them to prevent it. Everything changed when the youngest child, Zeus, managed to survive and eventually forced Cronus to release his siblings. The freed gods united and waged a massive war against the Titans in a conflict known as the Titanomachy. After a brutal struggle, the Olympian gods emerged victorious. The world was then divided among the three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Zeus became ruler of the sky and king of the gods. Poseidon became ruler of the oceans, and Hades received dominion over the underworld. This division was decided by drawing lots. It wasn't a punishment or a demotion. Hades simply received the realm that governed the dead. While Zeus ruled the heavens and Poseidon ruled the seas, Hades ruled an entire dimension beneath the world. Interestingly, the ancient Greeks themselves were uncomfortable even saying Hades' name. Instead, they often used alternative titles such as Pluton, meaning the wealthy one. This name referred to the riches hidden beneath the earth, precious metals, fertile soil, and agricultural abundance. The Greeks believed the underworld controlled many of the earth's hidden resources. Because Hades ruled beneath the ground, he was also connected with wealth and fertility. This is why Hades was sometimes linked with prosperity rather than destruction. But despite this connection, people still feared invoking his name directly. Death was mysterious mysterious and unpredictable, and Hades represented that unavoidable fate. This fear gradually turned into misunderstanding over time. The most famous myth involving Hades is the story of his marriage to Persephone. According to the myth, Hades fell in love with Persephone and carried her away to the underworld to become his queen. Her mother, Demeter, was devastated by the loss of her daughter. In her grief, Demeter stopped allowing crops to grow, causing the world to fall into famine. Eventually, Zeus intervened and negotiated a compromise. His job was simple: maintain order in the afterlife. In Greek mythology, the dead were escorted to the underworld by Hermes and ferried across the river by Charon. At the gates stood the terrifying three-headed dog Cerberus, preventing the dead from escaping. Once inside, souls were judged by figures like Minos. Hades oversaw this entire system but rarely abused his power. He ensured the natural order of life and death remained balanced. Without him, the cycle of mortality would collapse. If we compare Hades to many other Greek gods, the contrast becomes striking. Zeus frequently punished mortals in brutal ways. Poseidon destroyed cities with earthquakes and storms. Even gods like Apollo or Artemis sometimes inflicted harsh punishments on humans. But Hades almost never acted out of jealousy or rage. In fact, he appeared in far fewer myths than many Olympians. When he did appear, it was usually because someone tried to cheat death or escape the underworld. Some famous heroes actually traveled to the underworld and attempted to return to the living world. One of the most famous examples is Orpheus. Orpheus descended into the underworld to rescue his beloved wife, Eurydice. He played such beautiful music that even Hades was moved. The god agreed to let Eurydice return to the living world, on one condition: Orpheus must not look back at her until they both reached the surface. Sadly, just before reaching the exit, Orpheus looked back, and Eurydice vanished forever. This story actually shows Hades as compassionate. He was willing to bend the rules because he was moved by grief and love. Another famous story involves Heracles. During his famous 12 labors, Heracles was tasked with capturing Cerberus, the guardian of the underworld. Instead of attacking him, Heracles asked Hades for permission. Surprisingly, Hades agreed, with one condition: Heracles had to capture the creature without using weapons. Heracles succeeded and later returned Cerberus safely to the underworld. Once again, Hades behaved reasonably and fairly rather than cruelly. The dark reputation of Hades largely comes from later reinterpretations. When Christianity spread across Europe, the Greek underworld became associated with the Christian concept of hell. Since Hades ruled the realm of the dead, he was gradually compared to Satan. This comparison was inaccurate but powerful. Over centuries, the image stuck. Modern movies, cartoons, and books often portray Hades as a fiery villain plotting against the other gods. But this version of Hades is far removed from the original mythology. The real Hades was not a devil figure. He was a cosmic administrator of the afterlife. In many ways, Hades represented an unavoidable truth of human existence. Death is inevitable, but the Greeks did not see death as purely evil. They saw it as part of the natural order of the universe. Without death, life itself would lose meaning, and without Hades, there would be no place for souls to go. This is why Hades was both feared and respected. He ruled the final destination of every mortal being, yet he did so with balance, discipline, and fairness. Today, scholars and mythology enthusiasts increasingly recognize that Hades was one of the most misunderstood figures in ancient mythology. He was not the god of evil. He was not the ruler of eternal torment. He was simply the guardian of the boundary between life and death. While other gods chased power, romance, revenge, and glory, Hades quietly performed one of the most important roles in the entire mythological cosmos. He maintained the balance between the living and the dead, and without that balance, the universe itself would collapse. So the next time you hear the name Hades, remember this: the ancient Greeks did not view him as a villain. They viewed him as a necessary force, a ruler who ensured the natural order of the universe, a god who kept the dead where they belonged, and perhaps most surprisingly of all, one of the fairest gods in all of Greek mythology. The truth is simple. Hades wasn't evil. He was just doing his job. Most people hear the name Hades and immediately imagine a cruel ruler of hell. But the truth is very different. In Greek mythology, Hades wasn't evil. He was the keeper of balance, the silent guardian of the dead. While gods like Zeus ruled the skies and Poseidon ruled the oceans, Hades simply did his duty. If this video changed the way you see Hades, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more myth-busting stories from ancient mythology. Until next time, keep questioning the legends.